Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. This morning we'll be in 2 Samuel chapter 19, verse 11, through chapter 20, verse 13. Then King David sent a message to Zadok and Abiathar the priests, saying, "Tell the elders of Judah, why should you delay any further in bringing the king back to his palace, when everything Israel is saying has come to the king's attention? You are my brothers, my very own flesh and blood. Why should you delay any further in bringing the king back? Say to Amasa, are you not my flesh and blood? God will punish me severely if from this time on you are not the commander of my army in place of Joab." He won over the hearts of all the men of Judah as though they were one man. Then they sent word to the king, saying, "Return, you and all your servants as well." So the king returned and came to the Jordan River. Now the people of Judah had come to Gilgal to meet the king and to help him cross the Jordan. Shimei, son of Gera the Benjaminite from Bahurim, came down quickly with the men of Judah to meet King David. There were 1,000 men from Benjamin with him, along with Ziba, the servant of Saul's household, and with him his 15 sons and 20 servants. They hurriedly crossed the Jordan within sight of the king. They crossed at the ford in order to help the king's household cross and do whatever he thought appropriate. Now after he had crossed the Jordan, Shimei, son of Gera, threw himself down before the king. He said to the king, "Don't think badly of me, my lord, and don't recall the sin of your servant on the day when you, my lord the king, left Jerusalem. Please don't call it to mind, for I, your servant, know that I sinned, and I have come today as the first of all the house of Joseph to come down to meet my lord the king." Abishai, son of Zeruiah, replied, "For this should not Shimei be put to death? After all, he cursed the Lord's anointed." But David said, "What do we have in common, you sons of Zeruiah? You are like my enemy today. Should anyone be put to death in Israel today? Don't you realize that today I am king over Israel?" The king said to Shimei, "You won't die." The king vowed an oath concerning this. Now Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, came down to meet the king. From the day the king had left until the day he safely returned, Mephibosheth had not cared for his feet, nor trimmed his mustache, nor washed his clothes. When he came from Jerusalem to meet the king asked him, "Why didn't you go with me, Mephibosheth?" He replied, "My lord the king, my servant deceived me. I said, 'Let me get my donkey saddled so that I can ride on it and go with the king, for I am lame.' But my servant has slandered me to my lord the king. But my lord the king is like an angel of God. Do whatever seems appropriate to you. After all, there was no one in the entire house of my grandfather who did not deserve death from my lord the king. But instead, you allowed me to eat at your own table. What further claim do I have to ask the king for anything?" Then the king replied to him, "Why should you continue speaking like this? You and Ziba will inherit the field together." Mephibosheth said to the king, "Let him have the whole thing. My lord the king has returned safely to his house." Now, when Barzillai the Gileadite had come down from Rogelim, he crossed the Jordan with the king so he could send him on his way home from there. But Barzillai was very old, 80 years old in fact, and he had taken care of the king when he stayed in Mahanaim, for he was a very rich man. So the king said to Barzillai, "Cross over with me, and I will take care of you while you are with me in Jerusalem." Barzillai replied to the king, "How many days do I have left to my life that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? I am presently 80 years old. Am I able to discern good and bad? Can I taste what I eat and drink? Am I still able to hear the voices of male and female singers? Why should I continue to be a burden to my lord the king? I will cross the Jordan with the king and go a short distance. Why should the king reward me in this way? Let me return so that I may die in my own city, near the grave of my father and mother. But look, here is your servant Kimham. Let him cross over with my lord the king. Do for him whatever seems appropriate to you." The king replied, "Kimham will cross over with me, and I will do for him whatever I deem appropriate, and whatever you choose I will do for you." So all the people crossed the Jordan, as did the king. After the king had kissed him and blessed him, Barzillai returned to his home. When the king crossed to Gilgal, Kimham crossed over with him. Now all the soldiers of Judah, along with half of the soldiers of Israel, had helped the king cross over. Then all the men of Israel began coming to the king. They asked the king, "Why did our brothers, the men of Judah, sneak the king away and help the king and his household cross the Jordan, and not only him, but all of David's men as well?" All the men of Judah replied to the men of Israel, "Because the king is our close relative. Why are you so upset about this? Have we eaten at the king's expense, or have we misappropriated anything for our own use?" The men of Israel replied to the men of Judah, "We have 10 shares in the king, and we have a greater claim on David than you do. Why do you want to curse us? Weren't we the first to suggest bringing back our king?" But the comments of the men of Judah were more severe than those of the men of Israel. Now a wicked man named Sheba, son of Bichri, a Benjaminite, happened to be there. He blew the trumpet and said, "We have no share in David. We have no inheritance in this son of Jesse. Every man go home, O Israel." So all the men of Israel deserted David and followed Sheba, son of Bichri. But the men of Judah stuck by their king all the way from the Jordan River to Jerusalem. Then David went to his palace in Jerusalem. The king took the 10 concubines he had left to care for the palace and placed them under confinement. Though he provided for their needs, he did not have sexual relations with them. They remained in confinement until the day they died, living out the rest of their lives as widows. Then the king said to Amasa, "Call the men of Judah together for me in 3 days, and you be present here with them too." So Amasa went out to call Judah together. But in doing so, he took longer than the time that the king had allotted him. Then David said to Abishai, "Now Sheba, son of Bichri, will cause greater disaster for us than Absalom did. Take your Lord's servants and pursue him. Otherwise he will secure fortified cities for himself and get away from us." So Joab's men, accompanied by the Kerethites, the Pelethites, and all the warriors, left Jerusalem to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri. When they were near the big rock that is in Gibeon, Amasa came to them. Now Joab was dressed in military attire and had a dagger in its sheath, belted to his waist. When he advanced, it fell out. Joab said to Amasa, "How are you, my brother?" With his right hand, Joab took hold of Amasa's beard as if to greet him with a kiss. Amasa did not protect himself from the knife in Joab's other hand, and Joab stabbed him in the abdomen, causing Amasa's intestines to spill out on the ground. There was no need to stab him again. The first blow was fatal. Then Joab and his brother Abishai pursued Sheba, son of Bichri. One of Joab's soldiers, who stood over Amasa, said, "Whoever is for Joab and whoever is for David, follow Joab." Amasa was squirming in his own blood in the middle of the path, and this man had noticed that all the soldiers stopped. Having noticed that everyone who came across Amasa stopped, the man pulled him away from the path and into the field and threw a garment over him. Once he had removed Amasa from the path, everyone followed Joab to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri. So, following David's return, David's military defeat of Absalom, and subsequently Absalom dying, the people say to bring back the king. So everyone in Israel essentially says to bring the king back to be king over them again. So David and his company crossed the Jordan back into Israel. And then Shimei, the son of Gera the Benjaminite, came and bowed down before the king and was like, "Don't think badly of me. Don't recall what I did." Which Shimei was the one who, as they were leaving and crossing the Jordan the other way, Shimei was tossing stones and dirt at them and cursing them. So now that David's back in power, its story has changed. And Abishai, Joab's brother, was like, "Should we kill him?" And he's like, "You and your brother are on my crap list. You're basically my enemies right now." Because Joab was the one who killed Absalom, his son. And Mephibosheth also comes to greet him and essentially said that Ziba, the servant that David had left in charge of Mephibosheth's estate, abandoned him as he was trying to go out and meet the king. So, and then this Barzillai, who was tending to David while he was in Mahanaim, he was very old, but David invited him to spend time, to come back with him to Jerusalem. But he denied and sent a representative, Kimham, instead. And then the tribes of Israel and the tribe of Judah get into this insult battle between each other. It's like, why did you get the king? We want the king too. We like the king more than you. And Judah's like, no, he's from our tribe. We like the king more than you. And then Sheba, latching on to this contention, drags Israel away by saying, we have no share in David. Everybody to your own house. As a way to like start seizing the throne, essentially. Which is funny to me that the contention is we wanted David as a king more than you. The rest of the tribes of Israel say, and then they immediately go to their own houses. So, oh yeah. So David had appointed Amasa as general over the army, which I can't remember. He was maybe he was in charge of Absalom's forces prior to this. Yeah, so he had made him general of his army, and he commanded him to assemble the troops in 3 days, but he took too long. So he's like, okay, Joab, you go deal with this Sheba, because you can't have the kingdom splintered and again. But Amasa meets him on the way, and, Joab, being the bloodthirsty, vendetta kind of guy he is, he stabs him in his belly while motioning that for a greeting, essentially. So, not a cool move, Joab. Yeah, I'm just... Oh, yeah. David knew that time was of the essence in dealing with Sheba. When Absalom had the chance to quickly crush David, he did not take the advantage of the opportunity. David did not want to make the same mistake with Sheba. Yeah, so carrying on here, John chapter 21, verses 1 through 25. After this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. Now this is how he did so. Simon, Peter, Thomas, called Didymus, Nathanael, who was from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples of his were together. Simon Peter told them, I am going fishing. We will go with you, they replied. They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. When it was already very early morning, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. So Jesus said to them, Children, you don't have any fish, do you? They replied, No. He told them, Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. So they threw the net, and were not able to pull it in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, It is the Lord. So Simon Peter, when he heard that it was the Lord, tucked in his outer garment, for he had nothing on underneath it, and plunged into the sea. Meanwhile, the other disciples came with the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from land, only about 100 yards. When they got out on the beach, they saw a charcoal fire ready, with a fish placed on it, and bread. Jesus said, Bring some of the fish you have just now caught. So Simon Peter went aboard and pulled the net to shore. It was full of large fish, 153, but although there were so many, the net was not torn. Come have breakfast, Jesus said, but none of the disciples dared to ask him, Who are you? Because they knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the 3rd time Jesus Jesus was revealed to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. Then, when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these do?" He replied, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." Jesus told him, "Feed my lambs." Jesus said a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He replied, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." Jesus told him, "Shepherd my sheep." Jesus said a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was distressed that Jesus asked him a third time, "Do you love me?" and said, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus replied, "Feed my sheep. I tell you the solemn truth. When you were young, you tied your clothes around you and went wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and others will tie you up and bring you where you do not want to go." Now Jesus said this to indicate clearly by what kind of death Peter was going to glorify God. After he had said this, Jesus told Peter, "Follow me." Peter turned around and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them. This was the disciple who had leaned back against Jesus' chest at the meal and asked, "Lord, who is the one who is going to betray you?" So when Peter saw him, he asked Jesus, "Lord, what about him?" Jesus replied, "If I want him to live until I come back, what concern is that of yours? You follow me." So the saying circulated among the brothers and sisters that this disciple was not going to die, but Jesus did not say to him that he was not going to die, but rather, "If I want him to live until I come back, what concern is that of yours?" This is the disciple who testifies about these things, and has written these things. And we know that his testimony is true. There are many other things that Jesus did. If every one of them were written down, I suppose the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written. Yeah. The Gospels aren't a complete account of every single act that Jesus performed while he was on this earth. That being said, they are sufficient to determine his deity and the major act of love that God performed for us. That is, sending his son Jesus to die on the cross for our sins. So you see here in John chapter 21 that it's not only when on the road to Emmaus or when the disciples were cowering in fear in various places in Jerusalem, but there are also other instances where Jesus appeared to the disciples, such as this time when Jesus appears to them at the Sea of Galilee. And in the same way, when he first met them, he tells them to cast the net on the other side, and they catch a lot of fish. So, yeah. And just as when Jesus said at the beginning to Peter, "I will make you a fisher of men," Jesus admonishes him here in 21:15 through 17, asking if he loves him, and given if he loves him, he should feed his lambs, shepherd his sheep, and feed his sheep. That is, adopt the role of a fisher of men. So, and this is how we know that John wrote this gospel, and that John 21:24, this is the disciple who testifies about these things. And this is a testimony. And let me see. I don't know that word. Martyria? Something like that. But, yeah, this is essentially a testimony from John 2,000 some years ago, and we would do well to recognize it as testimony that these events occurred. Carrying on, Psalm 120, verses 1 through 7. In my distress, I cried out to the Lord, and he answered me. I said, O Lord, rescue me from those who lie with their lips and those who deceive with their tongue. How will he severely punish you, you deceptive talker? Here's how, with the sharp arrows of warriors, with arrowheads forged over the hot coals. How miserable I am, for I have lived temporarily in Meshech. I have resided among the tents of Kedar. For too long I've had to reside with those who hate peace. I am committed to peace, but when I speak, they want to make war. What an interesting psalm. I wonder what the context is on this. Apparently, Psalm 120 is the first of a series of 15 psalms, each with the title A Song of Ascents. The reason for this collection and arrangement is not precisely stated. Many different explanations have been given for these degrees or steps or ascents. The Talmud says that the 15 songs corresponded to the 15 steps between these courtyards. Some have even supposed that the songs were sung by the Levites from these steps, though this is pure speculation. Probably the best explanation is that this is the Pilgrim Festival songs, that these were songs for the people of God as they made the pilgrim journey to Jerusalem and the temple at the 3 appointed feasts. The author of these 15 psalms is not known, and most probably they were not the work of one person. They have been attributed to David, to Solomon, to Ezra, to Haggai, to Zechariah, and to Malachi, without any positive evidence. They are, however, excellent in their kind, and written with much elegance, containing strong and nervous sentiments of the most exalted piety, expressed with great felicity of language in a few words. Meshech was a distant place, far from the land of Israel. Kedar was a place associated with the nomadic tribes in the lands surrounding Israel. Meshech was the name of a group of barbarous tribes who, in the times of Sargon and Sennacherib, those are Babylonian rulers, inhabited the highlands to the east of Cilicia, and in later days retreated northwards to the neighborhood of the Black Sea. Kedar was one of the Bedouin tribes of the Arabian desert. These two peoples were located so far apart geographically that they can only be taken here as general term for the heathen. No one person could have lived among both. They are examples of warlike tribes, among whom the singers of Psalm 120 had no true home. Carrying on, Proverbs chapter 16, verses 16 and 17. How much better it is to acquire wisdom than gold. To acquire understanding is more desirable than silver. The highway of the upright is to turn away from evil. The one who guards his way safeguards his life. Job 28 speaks in much the same way as Proverbs 16:16 there. How much better it is to acquire wisdom than gold. To acquire understanding is more desirable than silver. There's a whole section of verses there. Let me see. Starting in 28:15, fine gold cannot be given in exchange for it, nor can its price be weighed out in silver. It cannot be measured out for purchase with the gold of Ophir, with precious onyx or sapphires. Neither gold nor crystal can be compared with it, nor can a vase of gold match its worth. Of coral and jasper no mention will be made. The price of wisdom is more than pearls. The topaz of Cush cannot be compared with it. It cannot be purchased with pure gold. And he goes on to say that And Job 28:28. The fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to turn away from evil is understanding. So, we should rightly pursue wisdom. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.